establishing a myriad of RTCs. I think he knew what was coming because my governor is a rhino.
Yeah, go ahead.
This little district that I found that I live in that is close to the city is one of those newly formed groups. And I've read up on the bylaws and I've reached out and asked for meeting notes and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I'm getting sworn in or voted in, whatever the protocol is, in a week. And I know I'm going to go up against some big players. And I'm just I'm asking you the best way.
Well, I think that some people say as long as you can lay low and kind of see what's going on. I personally do not advocate that you do anything that you don't want to do. Like I will not work for bad candidates, for rhino candidates. I would prefer we had this is just me now. I would prefer we had 250,000 because that's about how many precincts there are. There's a little more positions than that. Screaming people coming in saying, look, you have not been doing your job. You betrayed us on so many levels. You didn't stand up for that we had an honest vote count last time that everybody can now see. That's what I prefer. But some people believe that you, depending on what you're in, that you just kind of lay low and let them appoint you and get involved and get others involved. Dan Schultz advocates that way. He'd probably be on the call here, but so yeah, it's you really got to feel it. I've advocated for some people to go under the radar also because they get confused of who are their people, and then you eventually may have a majority. But I'll tell you, I have never met one person in 30 years of doing this. It's actually 33 years of looking at this situation. We were very active in 1988 and 1990. And actually overturned the Republican Party here on a technicality, but the court stole it from us, which I've told the story on this call. But I've never seen one person recruited by the party that was not an unreliable rhino. Whatever they felt when you're talking to them, they got that job because their relative has a job or they have a job. And when it comes time to vote, they become very quiet and vote the way that those already in there, want to vote. We have a guy like Dan Riley down in Georgia who's taken over Douglas County there, but it's a small county. When you get to the big cities, sounds like you're near Boston. It's much tougher.
I am.
Yeah. Okay.
Matter of fact, Jimmy, go ahead. I'm sorry. There's a state committee. The female seat is available. I've done my work, and it's just sitting there open through all of this high COVID stuff.
Yeah, well, they may appoint you, especially because it's a Democratic state primarily. A lot of times they're looking for people to do that. Okay.
Like a
now wait. Okay, Lois Kanishi is saying, and she's a longtime worker in Pennsylvania. She cannot hear anything. Lois, let's see.
Problem with her computer, I believe.
Yeah, you might need to, I don't know what to say about that. You could always, okay, she can hear now. Okay, sometimes you got to play with the controls.
Yes.
So it's 8:01.
Yeah.
And so Q, thanks for, I know you went up to the Trump rally yesterday. Thanks.
Yeah, I want to talk about it for a few minutes later on.
Yeah. I want you to too, because I heard Trump spent a lot of it saying that the election was stolen. So good on Trump for that.
Yeah, that was said when the GOP wanted to say, no, everything was just perfect. And, and just think about 2024. They just wanted to talk about.
That is the enemy talking. That is the enemy talking. I will never call this low IQ always and now demented Biden president. What Sean Hannity and Trump called the deep state, the shadow government, which someone like our special guest, Doug Bersol, has known like I have for 50 years that this exists. They had to drop their mask and they made an illegitimate person president. And I will never call this silly team they got up there, president or vice president. Okay, it's 8:02. So if you don't mind, we'll pause for 5 seconds.
Unfortunately, you can't talk now, but you have to wait until after, our guest speaks and you can actually raise up your question.
Okay, Jack Lamb. I don't know if that's the famous Jack Lamb that was a policeman for many years. I think it might be. Okay, so but after we get to, I'm going to make a short presentation for new people. Then Doug Bersall is the special guest. He was actually a supervisor of elections, a real supervisor of elections in Richmond, Virginia, for the first part of this century, and he's going to tell us. I'm sorry, Richmond, New Hampshire. Did I say Richmond, Virginia? Richmond, New Hampshire. And they counted the votes the way everybody should count votes, and that would be legal and constitutional. So my name is Jim Conda Jr. This is the Network America call for June 27th, 2021. And we usually start off with a short summary for new people, and I cover usually two things. And we switched them from the first calls we did. All these calls, by the way, are recorded on our website, networkamerica.org, at a tab that's called Archived Video Calls. Okay. Of course, some people just call in by phone, but they still are participating. So the first part is, why are we doing this? Why do we have a national call? Why are we trying to get, the call is nationwide and that people call it from all over the country, but we've never had more than 35 people on this call. We have room right now for 500, and we could up that. I don't know how many there'll be tonight, but it's still the average American who's super concerned. I'm talking about the tens of millions that are super concerned and know we got a problem in this country, a big problem in this country right now because of the forward motions of the socialists and communists who might be going under other names. They still aren't concerned enough to do the one thing they need to do to peacefully take back the country, or it isn't hit their radar. So why are we doing this? Because, and I'm going to tell you how it works, but first I'm going to tell you why we're doing this. The precinct system is the only system that's been set up for over 150 years. Abraham Lincoln referred to it when he was running for president, said, get all of our precinct out to get the vote out. The precinct system is the only.
I have to do something right now.
Okay.
I'll be in a second.
You're okay. I guess everyone should mute themselves. Ed, we just heard you.
I just muted him.
Okay. So at any rate, it's the only way to peacefully and constitutionally take back the country. If we had, in the 250,000 or so precinct positions, 250,000 to 400,000 people running, because some of them have a man and a woman or something like that in some states. If we had that, we could then go to replace all the Republican Party leaders in the county leaders, okay? The county leaders. Those county leaders have so much power, we call the precinct people, that the neighborhood precinct committeeman, or whatever it's called in your state, we call them the most powerful office in the land, because they elect the party leaders for the county, okay? And that usually happens, I'll explain when that happens, when I say how it works. Those county leaders decide how the vote's counted in your county. So we could have an honest vote, like special guest Doug Bersall is going to tell us about, how he did it in Richmond, New Hampshire. And many towns in New Hampshire do it that way still, the small ones. Then they endorse the candidates for Congress and city council. In the last century, even before we had this illegal secret computer vote counts in most of the country, 95% of the time the endorsed candidate won at the primary. So if the Republican Party or the Democratic Party endorsed somebody for the primary, which in Ohio is in May, it's whatever month it is in your state, that person won 95% of the time. Why is that? For most people, election day sneaks up on them. Oh, it's election day. They go to the polls. There's somebody there and hands them the Republican list if they're conservative, and they go in and vote for it. And usually the challengers don't have that kind of a reach. So that's the simple explanation as to why most of the time so that's big news, that you endorse the candidate and they're going to go to the general election, and either the Democrat or Republican is going to go to Congress. So we could change the congressman, change the Congress, and change our nation's destiny, reclaim our nation's destiny. This is the only way to do it peacefully. The only way. People say, well, maybe there's another way. No, there is not. Believe me. I'm not yelling at anybody. I'm just emphasizing there is no other peaceful way to do it. Okay. Now, then the local county party leaders elect the state leaders and the national leaders, and they set the rules for so much stuff like the presidential convention, or they endorse the senators. So that's a lot of power, what I just said there. It really is basically the basic power in the whole country if we understood it, okay? And if our people understood it. And I blame our leaders, the groups that I like, the NRA, Right to Life, Ron Paul organization, the Tea Party. Tea Party did tell people a little bit about it, but not really telling them we had to replace the Republican Party leadership, because it's all, so much of it is rhino. Okay. So they have not told our people. They tell you to write letters. Okay, fine. I'm not against writing letters. They tell you to go to rallies and I've gone to the Trump rallies and the Ron Paul rallies, and they're fun, and you scream and you go home. They tell you to go visit your congressman. I'm not against visiting your congressman and your city councilman if you've got the energy to do that. But that's treating us like little kids. That's like saying, hey, these people in office and the party leaders, they're superior beings to us. All you can go do is go and beg them, please do something for us. Please do something for the Constitution. And then we got to go home and hope they do it when they're being hit with tremendous pressure from the national level, financially and every other way, to go with the program that's slowly turning the United States into a socialist state as fast as they can think they can get away with it, with the control of the media, basically, and control of the secret computer vote count in 99% of the country. Okay. So they haven't told us. What they should be telling us is, you are adults like the congressman. In fact, in most cases, you're more alert, more patriotic, and smarter than the people that are holding office, whether by legitimately or by computer fraud. And so when you get in the precinct system, you become, as some people say, an owner, not just a donor. Okay. And Dan Schultz, who may be on this call, and I'm going to mention in a second here, I met him in 2007 on these Network America calls. He sounds the same way today as he did then, same tone of voice, same message. And that's what we were promoting when we met him, which is, this is the way you do it. This is how we become the party leaders and become the congressman. Now everybody said, well, I don't know if I can be a congressman. Okay, fine. But there are people in your area and in every district that are capable of it, would do a much better job. But you do it by the precinct system. Okay. Dan broke through and got on Steve Bannon's show a few months ago. Bannon's War Room. Steve Bannon was a top advisor to Trump at one time. He's not the biggest microphone, but he has a big microphone. And Dan started pushing nationwide. People saw him, and they've been coming into the precinct system ever since. We've set up this networkamerica.org, not per se to get new members, but where people can sign up, talk to each other. If you go to networkamerica.org, you can hit enter and join your county, your state, and you can talk to anybody you want. There's no gatekeepers at networkamerica.org. We're just trying to get all the thousands of leaders and millions of concerned people to cooperate together. Okay. So that was a breakthrough when Dan Schultz finally got on Steve Bannon. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Now, how does it work, though? If you're new, you say, well, how does this work? Why, I never heard of this. I'll tell you how it works and where we're losing the country. There's one country, United States of America, 50 states. Those states are divided into 3,141 counties. I live in Hamilton County in Ohio, which is southwestmost county, and near Indiana and Kentucky. And this is where Cincinnati is. Okay, so I live in Hamilton County. You live in a county. There's 3,141 counties, usually is the number used. Okay, now, you probably all know what county you live in, but what people are not aware of, you also live in a precinct, a vote, not a police precinct, you live in that too, but a voting precinct, a neighborhood voting precinct. And that's where you and all your neighbors go to vote. We vote at the White Oak Senior Center. You may vote at somebody's house or at a school or whatever. And of course, now we got the illegal mail-in ballots, but we'll leave that aside for the moment. So in that in that precinct that you live in, it's just as definitely defined as your state and your county. The borders are so precise if you go down to the Board of Elections. So a precinct, neighborhood precinct, is usually 10 or 15 streets around your house if you live in the city. And it's so exact that if there's a main street in your precinct, 2224 might be in your neighborhood precinct. And then the next house over, 2426, might be in the next precinct. That's how exact these borders are. And you can get the borders and who's in your precinct and who's a voter in your precinct, who isn't registered to vote, who's a Democrat, who's a Republican, by going to the Board of Elections and asking for the walking list for your precinct, or in some counties it's online, okay? So you live in this definite precinct. Well, every May, excuse me, I'm in Ohio. I'm going to use Ohio as an example. We have May primaries in odd years. So every May in the even years, 2022 will be the next one. You have on the ballot for Republican primary, Democrats are doing the same thing. For Congress, for city council, for dog catcher, who's ever running, there may be some competition, there may not. Maybe nobody's challenging the incumbent congressman, but then he's going to win. But if somebody is challenging, you vote at your primary ballot. If you're a Republican and you pick Republican ballot, you vote for him, okay, for somebody, for one of the congressmen. Well, at the end of that, in the primary states, some are caucus states, but in the primary states like Ohio, you'll see committeeman or something like that. Nobody ever notices it. Often it's not on the ballot because nobody's running. 1/3 of these precincts are vacant. The most powerful office in the land, they're vacant. Like the lady was saying at the beginning of this call before the call started, okay? So you run and you win. So or if there's somebody against you, then whoever gets the most votes wins at that primary. But most people have never noticed that that's at the end of their primary ballot. Okay. So how do you run in Ohio? Again, it's different in each state a little. You have to get 5 signatures from your neighborhood. You get the walking list either online or from the Board of Elections. And in Ohio, if you're running Republican, you have to get 5 Republican signatures that are valid, or you got to get 5 Republican and independent signatures that are valid. You can't get Democrats that are valid. You can't get Democrats. And what you can do then is, if you want, you can register people and turn that registration in with your petition, and those are valid because you just registered them. So it's easy to do, relatively speaking, and that's how you run. Well, then what happens? If you get elected in May in Ohio, using Ohio as an example, there's a meeting a month later by state law. We don't know about this meeting because our leaders haven't told us, because they want to cozy up to the current Republican Party or whatever, or they don't. The meeting in June in Ohio by state law, all the elected precinct executives in my county and in every other county in Ohio come together at downtown at the convention center, at a big hotel room, or at a school if it is a smaller county. All the elected precinct executives in the Republican Party for your neighborhood precinct and all the others come together, and they elect the head of the party. Ladies and gentlemen, this is where we have been losing the country for 50 years. We don't know about that meeting. We don't show up at that meeting, and we don't know that that's where you elect the party leaders in your county who have so much power, who decide how the votes counted, endorse the candidates that become congressmen and can change the country, elect the state leaders. They go a month later to Columbus in Ohio and elect 88 state leaders, county leaders elect the state leader. Then the 50 state leaders get together in St. Louis or somewhere a little bit later and elect the national leader, which is now Mitt Romney's relative. Okay. So that is how the system works. And I'm going to add one more part this week before we bring in our special guest, and that is what should be happening right now. We got to the end of this call a few times, and somebody said, somebody who was trying to make sure everybody understood, what is the purpose of this call? They would say at the end of the call, and I'd think, well, gee, I thought we said the purpose of it, but apparently not clear enough. So here's the purpose of this call. If I could snap my fingers now, or if Dan Schultz could snap his fingers, of Arizona, the attorney from Arizona who may be on the call here, we could snap our fingers, we would have 400,000 people running for precinct across the United States. Not that hard. There's tens of millions of Trump supporters, Ron Paul supporters, 3 million NRA members. tens of millions of right to life support. We easily could find them if everybody knew this is where it counted, okay, to be active, okay? So right now we would want those people to realize they live in a precinct and find out what precinct they're in. I live in Green Township Y precinct, Green Y in Hamilton County in Ohio. You live in a precinct. You can find out your precinct by calling the Board of Elections and giving them your address, or buying the book for all the precincts in your county for $25 or so. It may be more now, or maybe it's online. It should be online, but it's not online yet in every county. You find out what precinct you're in, and then you run for precinct. If you have the appetite to do so, and we wish anybody that's putting money in the bank should also be running for precinct or supporting someone who's good in their area. Okay, so if that happened, then we would, and then everyone realizes they got to try to get elected, or they help somebody get elected that thinks is for the Constitution, for the Bill of Rights. We'll stand up for that against the party. We'll stand for principle over party. Most of the people you're going to meet in precinct are not trying to destroy the country. They just are puppets of the Rhino establishment, leading most of the party. And the Trump faction came in and tried to give us a different way. Trump, I honestly, I don't know how compromised Trump is, because apparently the military wouldn't obey him when they were stealing that election, because had they been willing to, and Barr was just as horrible a attorney general as Obama's people, or as Jeff Sessions. He should have indicted a bunch of people right then on the spot. And there's a Dr. Douglas Frank, who's from Cincinnati, who Mike Lindell, the Pillow Man, did a show with, who showed the incredible manipulation of computers and voting rolls and that happened. It's incredible. We've been saying for 50 years, I got dragged into this 50 years ago, that if they're counting your votes in secret, you got a problem. All votes should be counted in the open by people. And that's where we're going to get into our special guest now. Doug Bersall is one of my favorite people. He has done many things in his life, but he was the supervisor of Richmond, New Hampshire, supervisor of elections for, I guess, about 10 years. He can tell us for sure. And Doug, would you come in now and explain to people what people often say now? Well, how should we count the votes? Their whole life, they've only heard of using computers. How should we count the votes? And you did it in New Hampshire the way that the Supreme Court said it has to be done, in 3 decisions, that we not only have the right to vote, we have the right to know that our vote is counted honestly. So Doug Bersall, come in and introduce yourself a little bit, and tell us what happened when the voting the voting closed at 7 o'clock or 7:30 in Richmond, New Hampshire. What did you do after that to count the votes?
Can you hear me?
Try to speak again.
Can you hear me? Am I unmuted?
You're unmuted, yeah. And Q, can you hear okay?
Yes, I can hear
Yes.
perfectly well.
Okay, go. Yeah, just talk as loud and as close to the phone, because you sound a little bit in the distance, but we can hear you. So go ahead, Doug.
All right. So my name is Doug Bersaw, B-E-R-S-A-W. I was born in 1952 in North Adams, Massachusetts, but I grew up in New York in the Hudson Valley. And I've been in New Hampshire since the 1980s. And for several years, I held the public office of town moderator. That's a fancy word, a New Hampshire term for supervisor of elections. So I was in charge of all the elections in my precinct, which in New Hampshire, in a small town, we have 800 voters in this town, of which 400 to 500 show up for every election. That's a very high percentage if you study the elections in your local area. 50 to 60% or more showing up in an election is pretty extraordinary. But the town moderator runs the town meeting, which is the legislative body of towns in New Hampshire. He also runs the elections. So the moderator is in charge of seeing that the polls are opened, that they're set up properly, that the supervisors of the voting checklist, have the voters' names, their parties, and so on, and when they last voted. There's a complete compendium of every voter in town, when he last voted, and so on, and which party he belongs to. So they use the checklist to check people into the voting area, which in our town we vote in a large town hall called the Veterans Hall. And the polls typically are open from 8 in the morning till 7 in the evening. Some elections it's different hours, but that's the norm. And the only other voting opportunity that you have in New Hampshire is you can vote by absentee ballot. And we usually have, on a normal election, 10 to 20 absentee ballots. People are too sick to come out of their house, or they're out of town for that week, or whatever. There are various reasons why you can legitimately vote by absentee. But the process is very strictly controlled. So in New Hampshire, about 15% towns or precincts, because most towns in New Hampshire are small, and the precinct is the whole town. There are larger towns that have numerous precincts. Of course, the cities like Manchester, Concord, Nashua, they have numerous precincts. But when the voters come to cast their vote in Richmond, we have two wooden ballot boxes. One of them dates from the 1840s. It's been in use in our town since before the Civil War. And they would hold several hundred ballots depending on the type of election, because if it's a major national election and you have, of course, president, senators, congressmen, and all the other various local races, the ballot could be fairly large and might have as many as 10 or 15 different races or items on the ballot. Now, the voter goes and he marks his ballot, and then he places it by hand in this wooden box, which is opened and shown to be empty before the polls are opened. Everybody who's there, the poll workers and any of the public that wants to see, he opens the box, he shows it around, he then puts a lock on it, and it's locked until 7 o'clock when the polls close. We have a second ballot box for overflow if there's a larger turnout. When the election is over and the polls are closed, these boxes are then, tables are set up, and each table has teams of counters. Normally, all the ballots are counted by hand, and the team of counters is two people, one of whom reads off the name that's voted for. For example, let's say there are 5 different offices on the ballot, which is a small number in a given election, but let's say there are 5. So these ballots have to be counted 5 times, because as you go through the pile, you only check off one office. So, for example, in this past election, we had the president. So you check and see if it was the Libertarian or the Republican or the Democratic candidate, whoever it was. One person reads off the name. Okay, this ballot is for Donald Trump. This ballot's for Joe Biden. He then hands the ballot to another person, to the person to his right who looks at it, and then a third person marks down on a piece of paper who the ballot was for. So you have teams of 3 counters, and the ballots, as soon as the boxes are open, they're divided into piles of 50 ballots. Just indiscriminately, everybody takes and they count up, and each pile is 50 ballots. So if we had 500 ballots, then you would need 10 teams of counters. That's 30 people. And they will process those ballots, if there were 5 people on the ballot, 5 times. So each ballot counting table gets a pile of 50 ballots, and they run through the votes for president. 36 for Trump, 13 for Biden, and 3 for Republican, and 3 for the Libertarian, and 1 blank. So then they have a tally, and then they go on to the next office, which in this case would have been for the U.S. Senate or the U.S. Congress, and write down the ballot. If you have 10 different elections going on all on one ballot, well, then you're there for hours. But that's the way they're counted. And then when each bundle of 50 is all counted and the tally sheets are together, then they have a table of people who tally up the totals. So they'll take 10 piles of tally sheets, and they'll take a calculator and count up, okay, 36 for Trump, 14 for Biden, whatever, and they add them up, and then you have a total. And these totals are then called in by telephone, and those tally sheets become part of the record. The ballots are then locked up in the town hall, and we're required to keep them for a certain number of months, depending upon the election by state law. Some small local elections have to be held for 6 months or a year, just in case there are recounts or there's any reason to go back, for them, and then the town votes after a certain period of time. I think it might be 2 years for federal elections. They can then be destroyed, but you always keep the tally sheets anyway. So that's how we run elections in Richmond and have run them for many years. Unfortunately, in the state of New Hampshire, only about 15% of the precincts run it that way. And we if we have to have a recount on any given race, or we had a recount on a zoning issue one year, well, it was off by 2 votes. Okay, so you're counting 500, 800 ballots, and yeah, you could be off by 1 or 2 votes. There's such a thing as human error, but we're rarely, and most of the time, we're spot on. We're not even off by 1. Any person who is a town resident, or even not a town resident, any person, member of the public, is free to come in and observe this counting process. It's done in a big hall, big town hall, open area. You could use a school gymnasium, or if it's a larger precinct, you got thousands of votes, you may have 20 tables of counters in one big hall. It all depends on the particular circumstance. But that's the way modern, sophisticated nations do their ballot counting. Third world countries do it the way we do, with easily hackable machines. Now, something came up this year in New Hampshire, and if you are one of those people who follows the news about the election, or the non-election, or whatever you want to call it, there's a town over near Nashua, eastern side of the state. I belong to Cheshire County, which is the southwest corner of New Hampshire. We abut Vermont and Massachusetts in the southwest corner. Wyndham had elections for the state legislature. So this town was allowed to have 4 representatives to the state legislature. We have one of the largest legislatures in the world, actually. We have over 400 people, so every 2,000 people get a legislator. So there were 4 legislators due to be chosen from this town. And there were 7 or 8 people running. The 4 top vote getters get the positions. And the 4 top vote getters in this case in November 2020 were Republicans. And one woman who was a Democrat lost by only 20 votes. And she thought, it was like 10,000 votes counted. I want a recount. And so they had a recount. And something very interesting happened in the hand recount, because even though in Wyndham, their ballots are not counted the way they're counted in Richmond, they're counted by a machine. Most of the machines that count the ballots in New Hampshire, they're not computers per se. We don't have computer voting. We have paper ballot voting. The paper ballots are filled out, those little ovals that you're supposed to black in perfectly and so on. They get scanned in by a machine called AccuVote. It's a scanner. And they scan the cards and they register the votes into the computer tabulation. Now, this vote turned out that every one of the Republican candidates was undercounted by 300 votes. So the Democrat actually lost by 320. Her vote count, very interestingly, didn't change, but all the Republicans had 300 votes less than were counted on the machines. And they had a very, the townspeople were furious about it when the actual hand count of the paper ballots came up. They said something fishy is going on with our elections here in town. And they demanded the selectmen and the town moderator or the election officials to do something. They demanded the state secretary of state and the attorney general to look into it, and none of them did. They just shrugged it off as if, oh, it's nothing, it's just a little anomaly. Well, 300 votes is a lot of votes, and that can change election very quickly, especially in one town. And suppose there were 300 votes off in every town in New Hampshire. Trump would have won New Hampshire. Trump won our town overwhelmingly, but we count by hand. Anyway, these AccuVote machines are owned. They used to be produced by a company named Diebold. They're now owned by a system called Dominion. I'm sure that any of you have looked into any of the election stuff. You know who Dominion is. So they finally, the people in the town got the state legislature to pass a special law, because the legislature is overwhelmingly Republican here in this state, both the Senate and the House. And we have a Republican governor, and, well, we have a rhino governor, and the council, the governor's council, is also Republican. So they passed this law to do an audit of the election. And like every other audit that's going on, they're trying to throw every kind of monkey wrench into the works that's possible. I don't know, in the end, how clear an indication we are going to get of exactly what went wrong in the Wyndham vote, but apparently it was one machine that registered all the short votes. And what they're saying now is, because many of the computer cards that you marked your votes on were folded, they were folded right through the Democratic candidate's name. So even though she did not get a vote, it registered as a vote for her, and that meant that that person voted for 5 people, because they checked 4 ballots on top, 4 Republican names, and then the fold, the crease right through this Democrat's name, registered hers as a vote. So then the machine kicked out all the votes and said this is a ballot, what they call an overvoted ballot. If you're only allowed to vote for 2 people and you vote for 3, it doesn't count. So here, these people supposedly voted for 5 people. When they opened the papers and they saw that the fold went through this woman's name, but there was no mark in there, all the Republicans got 300 votes extra. Her vote didn't change much at all. Now, you might say, oh, well, this was just an anomaly, just a strange thing. But I'm sure there are people who know that can happen. There is absolutely no way that you can guarantee the integrity of election unless you have hand-counted paper ballots that are tracked. The custody of them is tracked from the minute the ballots are printed until the minute they're counted and tallied, and the tallies are called into the state for the election process. It's very simple. It's not, as they say, rocket science, but it's way too clean for most of the people who are in positions of power in this country. They really don't care what the people say, because they have the system controlled. And anybody who would, from this moment forward, think that we should use any sort of electronic device to count votes in an election, it's either got rocks in their head or they're out to subvert the nation. Paper ballots, hand-counted, in public, even if it costs more, because, of course, you got to hire 20 or 30 or 50 people, but it's 4 or 5 hours. The town pays them, like $15 an hour to count the votes. You can get people to do it. And if they know that this is how they're going to protect the integrity of their republic and their voting procedures, I don't think you'll have any problem getting the people to. So that's my spiel. If anyone has any questions or anyone wants to keep tabs on the Wyndham election audit here in New Hampshire, it's a very interesting case. I don't think it's anything like the one, the breathtaking revelations of Mike Lindell with the computer hacking. But Donald Trump won this election by an overwhelming majority of votes. I wouldn't be surprised if he got higher than 70% of the vote if there was a real hand-counted election that was run honestly in this country. And so we have a fake government now that is illegitimate. And we're never going to have another one that's fair if we don't get control of the elections process and keep it clean and above board 100%. So does anyone have any questions?
Doug, thank you very much for a very clear presentation. And I want, before we take questions, and what we usually do is, so now we'll take questions for the guests, and then after that, we'll go into the discussion and action part of the call of anybody that's got any questions on how to run for precinct. But this is not just, we've happened into this as far as the way so few towns in our country or precincts count the votes correctly anymore. You'll notice a key feature of what Doug said is those votes, the ballots never leave the public site until they're counted in public. So in Ohio and in all the other states, 49 and a half of, even half of New Hampshire, or more than half, he said 85% of New Hampshire, Doug said.
Yeah.
You have, in Ohio, for example, we vote, they direct you over to an ATM type machine that you immediately put your vote into. That machine is run by computers that can easily be accessed by cell phone or satellite technology. They don't need to have any hard wires. That's been the case since at least the 90s. Dr. Douglas Frank here from Cincinnati on his Mike Lindell show, and in his speeches says anybody that tells you that these computerized machines of any kind are not connected to the internet is either stupid or lying. He says that directly in his talk. And of course, obviously, if I can call you in California and my cell phone finds your cell phone amongst all the tens of millions of cell phones near where you live, then obviously the people that made these machines have technology to reach the modems in those machines, obviously. And what I wanted to say, Doug, before we take questions is since 1973, completed in 1988, we have at that time only 4 mega companies counting our votes by computer. I put counting in quotes. They've changed over the years, and it became 3 companies around 2013 when Dominion bought Sequoia and Diebold. There were 4. There was ES&S, Election System and Software, which does 60% of the counties. Hart InterCivic, which we use here in Cincinnati out of Texas. ES&S out of Omaha, Nebraska. And then Dominion, which everybody heard of for the first time. We've been talking about these companies for 30 plus years. The Colliers, in their book, Vote Scam, The Stealing of America, which our story in Cincinnati is chapter 12, written in 1992, talk about these companies. But most people only heard about Dominion in the last 2 years because somebody whistle blew on Dominion when it was found that they had switched 5,000 or 6,000 votes from Trump to Biden in that one Michigan county. I agree with Doug Bersol, though. Trump probably won by 70% plus. He beat Hillary by a large margin. We have no checks and balances on the vote count in 49 and a half states. And I could go into different examples of that, including when you get too close, like in Debbie Wasserman Schultz's Democratic primary, and the guy that challenged her, who was kind of a Bernie Sanders guy, wanted to see the ballots. They had destroyed all the ballots a few weeks after the election, and they destroyed all the ballot images, and the judge let him off with a $1,000 fine. That should have been national news. Of course, all 5 TV networks are not allowed to cover this subject, so they suppressed it. So they're not allowed to cover it in detail. So anyway, if anybody had those 3 companies, though, were I'm sorry, I hate to use the word, it was a conspiracy against the American people, covered up by the 5 TV networks, because there's no way that we have 96% of our counties 99% of our vote counted by these three companies, ES&S, Hart, and Dominion. And I'm a little bit disturbed that Sidney Powell, Rudy Giuliani, and Donald Trump are not making ES&S and Hart as famous as Dominion, saying they all need to be investigated. They all have induced our counties who shouldn't have done it into illegal forms of voting where you still have the right to cast a ballot, but you don't have the right to know that your ballot was counted accurately. And what Doug Bursall just described to us for Richmond, New Hampshire, those people know that their ballot was counted accurately by time 11 p.m. or midnight comes around. So does anybody have any questions for Doug?
Ed, I have a point of order. Tom is trying to call in through San Jose on the phone, and all he gets is music, and he seems to have the right numbers.
He's got to have the pin for the meeting too, which is
he
all
has that. What he sent to me is all correct according to what I can see.
okay. Well, maybe could he call your phone and you just put him on? Bring him.
Ask him to try it again. There is a huge possibility that I didn't see it.
Okay, so he says Q says try it again, and maybe he was listening to Doug and wasn't, and he can let him in now. Okay. Okay, so he tell Tom to try it again. Okay, does anybody have any questions or discussions for our special guest Doug Bursall? Okay, go ahead.
Doug?
Yes.
This is Roy Postel in Nassau County, Florida. And Doug, I'm really interested about getting the scanners out of the precincts here in my county in Florida. And I'm prepared to, I'm thinking of ways to get in front of the Secretary of Elections. As the office holder, that's the name of the office here in Florida that handles the local elections. And I know what I'd like to find out from you is that when you talk about the teams of 3 voters at each table, three counters at each table,
Yes.
how do you arrive in advance about how many people to hire? Do you base that on like the previous elections, total number of ballots cast,
Yes,
and then divide that by
easy.
50?
It's fairly easy to figure that out. It's just simple mathematics.
Okay.
Every precinct has a voter list, and they check off the name as the person votes. So you can look through this list and know exactly how many people voted in any election, and you come up with an average. So your precinct might have 5,000 people vote. Ours has 500 people vote. You need a certain number of people to count a certain number of ballots. Now, this can also change by the ballot, because sometimes we might have a town election. And all there is a couple people for the city council, or town selectmen, as they're called here in New Hampshire. Somebody on the zoning board, somebody at 4 or 5 offices, and that ballot can be gone through pretty quickly.
Right.
But if you've got a complicated election, and sometimes you have more than one ballot in an election. For example, we have school districts here in New Hampshire. And at our town meeting in the spring, we have a school district ballot as well as the town ballot. So you might need extra counters there, because typically there are 8 to 9 ballot questions on the school district ballot. But, the person in charge of the precinct that does that, they're in charge of finding the people to do the counting. And typically we have one Democrat and one Republican, if you can find them, because in New Hampshire, especially in Richmond, but throughout the state of New Hampshire, independents are now or unregistered, unaffiliated are now the largest segment of the voting population. We have 60% independent and about 25% Republican and 15% Democrat in our town. So it's not always easy to find a Democrat that's willing to come in and do the vote. But if they don't want to come in and, whatever, as long as they're registered voters in the town and they get paid for their hours, and it comes out of the town budget or the precinct budget, because in our New Hampshire, where we are, the precinct is the town, and the moderator who runs the elections has a budget every year for the elections. It goes up and down, whether, like this year, we won't have any elections, except the town election. But sometimes you have a primary, a state primary, a national primary, a national election, and a state election. So, but it doesn't matter what type of election it is, the process is the same.
If you have a
ballot stack works well.
Say that again, Doug. Say that again, Doug. The
we
last
find
sentence.
that 50 ballots in a stack works well. You can go through them in 5 to 10 minutes.
That's great.
And
then
if you've got 10 different offices on there, well, then you multiply 10 minutes times 10 times and give them a little break to go to the restroom or the toilet or get a coffee or whatever. You can come up with 3, 4, 5 hours, whatever you expect it to take to count those ballots.
Yeah.
And once they're counted, they're sealed up in a box with a tape around it that's signed by the moderator and the selectmen of the town, and they're deposited in a safe in the town city hall. And by state law, only certain people can break that tape.
Okay, Roy had another question. Go ahead, Roy.
So let's just make sure I understand the example. If you have 500 voters in your precinct, in your town in New Hampshire, so do you get 30 people to work the table to count, and then 10 more people to do the tally sheets?
Exactly.
Okay, exactly. I got it. So if I have 5,000 in my precinct in Florida, I'm just doing a factor of 10 on all the positions, and I'm ready to go.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you.
Precisely.
And by the way, Roy, if I could comment here, and Roy and Doug, we figured this out on Watch the Vote USA, which is another one of our websites. And we sent to President Trump's short-lived Presidential Commission on Election Integrity, which had people in charge that absolutely did not know what they were doing. So they shut it down quickly. We figured out, we put on that report that we sent to that committee, how the vote should be counted. So if you go to watchthevoteusa.com, essays 2, 3, and 4, especially 2 and 3, tell exactly how the vote could be counted. Should be counted, and it's like they did in New Hampshire, but we're suggesting that in this age of cameras, we use cameras everywhere just as effectively as they use them in casinos. But we figured that on election night, you probably would have about 3 million people out of our 325 million involved in the election count. We believe election day should be a holiday and the day after in case it goes late. And you'd have about 3 million people doing what Doug said. But what's more important than that we get the people in office who the people really want? These are the people that are going to tell if we're going to go to war usually, or what the Army is going to do, or what. Now they're trying to change the local police forces into one national KGB Gestapo type police force. That's what they mean when they say defund the police. They don't mean defund the police. They mean defund the local police so they can bring in this KGB Gestapo type thing. So what's more important than that we get the people in office that were actually voted for by the people? So even if we had to have that many, see, we've been kind of trained our whole life. We're still in the dark ages, we're not in the dark ages physically, and that is, we're living in an era of physical plenty, an age of plenty that mankind has dreamed about for all 6,000 years of recorded history. But we are still completely in the dark ages on money and voting. So whenever this crowd that Hannity and Trump calls the deep state or the shadow government, when they get control, everything goes dark. The Federal Reserve, we know thanks to Ron Paul and a few others, has never been audited. The private company, which is the Federal Reserve, which Congress delegated the authority, they didn't come in and steal it. Congress gave them the authority in 1913 because they gave them congressmen all kinds of advantages. But that group, never been audited. We don't know how much money they're legally loaning to their friends through banks. And believe me, it's a lot. That's why they're buying up the country, buying up all these big industries. But we don't know what's going on. And in voting the same way, from 1973, when computers came in, to 1988, and now still today, we don't know, except in that small part of New Hampshire that does it right. We do not know for sure in a courtroom sense what our vote count is. And I'm sorry to tell you that unless those 3 mega companies, ES&S, Hart, and Dominion, want your vote to count or let it count, it does not count. That's how bad off we are. The answer is what Doug said. Get rid of all the computers, do it by hand, and make it a serious national day. Not just, gosh, I got off work. Can I find time to vote? Go home and watch the newsman, Dan Rather in the old days, tell you who won. That's not it. And that's what the establishment wants, as Doug said. The people are in power. They want us to be that disengaged. But we have to make this like we're being drafted for a day to go to war. And this elections have to be treated as seriously as we treat going to war, because it's really, in a way, it's more important, because that's who decides if we go to war. Somebody, I believe it might have been Christine, had her hand up.
No, actually, it was Lois first.
Okay, Lois.
I don't know.
Christine wants to be in line too. But
And
did Tom ever get in a queue?
Lois was next.
Okay.
She's not here anymore.
Oh, Lois went left?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if she wants to speak. But after that is Christine.
Lois, are you there, Lois? She may have had to go. Okay.
All right, Christine, you're next.
If you come back in, or maybe she would, it's Q who, so Christine is next.
Christine is
Yeah,
next.
I wondered who makes the decision to go to a hand counted ballot as opposed to a machine? How do we get that switched first? And then my other question was, how do we get back to like 10 or 20 absentee ballots, if any, and only verified absentee ballots, or otherwise go out and vote? How do we get back? First of all,
I
to
could answer
hand
those
count.
questions fairly quickly.
Yeah,
In theory, I don't have a problem with absentee ballots if they're handled properly and the chain of custody of the ballots is clear.
right.
There are many reasons why a person would like to vote and they're physically or morally incapable.
Right.
But it's a process that's ripe for problems, and it has to be very carefully controlled.
Right.
Who makes the decision on how the ballots are counted? I would say that it depends on the jurisdiction. Now, in New Hampshire, it's the local moderator or the local government that decides, but also the state can allow machines to be used in counting. So if there was a law in the state that said no electronic machine or no machine can be used in counting, then all the cities and towns and precincts would have to count by hand. That would be the easy and simple way to do it, but also individual jurisdictions could change it at any time. If the city of Manchester decided that they didn't want to count votes by any machines anymore, the city council could enact a law that says no more voting machines, only by hand. Then they would have to fund, because it's a lot cheaper to just plug in a machine and let it run for the night than it is to actually pay people to sit down and count openly and honestly and in the public eye, as Jim said. You have the right that all votes are counted in public session and open, and the chain of custody of all the ballots and the tallies are public record. So I don't know what state you're in, how your state does it, but you
I'm
can
in
find
Maine.
that out. You're in where?
I'm
Maine.
in Maine, York, Maine.
York, Maine.
It's-
Oh,
Yep.
I have friends in York, Maine.
Yeah, it's gone pretty liberal. So I'm wondering, how do we get our area? Do you start at the precinct or?
Okay, so
Well, the
Doug,
first thing I would do is research the laws in Maine and find out who decides how the votes are counted. If
Okay.
it's decided by the state, then you got to deal with the state. If it's decided by the local precinct or the local town or city of York, then you start there.
Okay,
could I back up, Doug? What Doug said is also true in Ohio, and I think it's true in every state, but I would be glad to find a state where it wasn't true. The state sets the parameters, the county or the local town decides how to count the votes. So that's why I said in my initial presentation, one of the most important things about precinct is if we become precinct executives and go to that meeting and elect our county leaders, okay, then that county leaders ultimately decide by who they endorse for election supervisor. In some cases, they just make the decision directly from the county election board, as in Ohio. Okay. they can decide to go back to paper ballots. As far as I know, all states still allow the use of paper ballots. I think they're only used, I don't mean I don't mean, I want to say they allow paper ballots, and they allow paper ballots to be hand counted. 80% of the country still uses paper ballots. That's not the issue, although all of them should. Using just bleeps of energy is ridiculous and is kind of a betrayal of the job of the local board of elections. But all of these, as far as I know, all of the states allow each county or local town to count paper ballots by hand before the ballots leave the public site. That's the second part. You have to say paper ballots counted by people before the ballots leave the public site. The crooks for 6,000 years have wanted to get your ballots away from you so they could count them in the back room, and they've used computers to throw dust in people's eyes. So everybody would have the option tomorrow morning, as far as I know, to go back to paper ballots counted by hand before they leave the public site, just like Doug supervised in Richmond, New Hampshire. But the states have also authorized computers, which they should unauthorize, and they give the counties the chance to count them by computer. It's a lot easier. These companies are billion-dollar companies. They make it easy for the boards of election people, so they're glad to give up the responsibility. The boards of election people are taken to gourmet restaurants and in a gourmet hotel once a year by these companies to be told how to handle people like you and me that raise questions. And they're very committed to the system, and it takes a lot of work off their shoulders. The only problem is in the process, we've given up our right to know who was elected. So anybody else? Okay.
Yeah, Sherry Klump was next, but I don't know if she wants to speak or not.
Yeah, go ahead, Sherry. Unmute yourself.
I think I did. So, well, my question was the same as Christine's. I'm over here in the corner. What I wanted to know was how we got votes changed from machine counting to hand counting, but you've addressed that. So,
yeah,
I think it's going to depend on the state.
Yeah, the only way.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, you go ahead.
I'm going to be appointed as a chair, precinct committee chair on Monday. Well, tomorrow. And I'll definitely find out more tomorrow as to how things work here in Texas.
Okay, and you want to eventually be elected because appointed people do not have the right to vote at the county meeting when it comes up. So you want to eventually, if they appoint you though, you'll just naturally slide into being elected at election time.
Yeah, so my situation is that there's a vacancy in this precinct. So I'm going for an interview. I assume I'm going to sign some sort of documents and be appointed for the interim anyway. But yeah,
okay.
You're right.
Yeah,
you're
and
right.
then they'll probably let you be elected when time comes. So
Okay.
Jim,
the answer
here
is go ahead.
Here in Texas, if you're appointed in the middle of the term, you're serving in that position, you're a full member.
Okay, good. That's better. So again, the answer to changing back to paper ballots counted before in public by people before they leave the public site, the answer to that is everybody get into the precincts, go to that county meeting and elect good, patriotic, pro Bill of Rights, pro Constitution people that will not put their conscience aside when the party tells them to. Their conscience will come over party. And that's, in my opinion, the only way to peacefully do it. The other way to do it is what the founding fathers did. And I usually address this. The other side doesn't like us mentioning this, but the Second Amendment was put in by the founding fathers. They said, third, so people could hunt and make food for themselves back then. Second, so they could help the community in times of disaster, like an earthquake where there might be lawlessness. But the main thing the founding fathers feared was a overweening federal government that would come in and try to make us a dictatorship. That's why they gave us the Second Amendment. Thomas Jefferson said that the tree of liberty would have to be watered with the blood of tyrants and patriots every 30 or 40 years. Well, that hasn't been necessary, thankfully, and we're not advocating that. All of us have been working to peacefully save the country because a shooting war, again, a civil war, would be very confusing and very deadly. So the way we can prevent this is to now peacefully get our 5 signature or whatever, run for precinct, okay, and get to that county meeting nobody's getting to and elect good party leaders. Then we can still save the country peacefully. There may be some scuffles at some of these meetings because these people in the big cities don't like to lose power, but that's the way we can do it peacefully. Okay, anybody else got any questions for Doug?
Dustin was next person in line.
Thank you.
Dustin,
Am I unmuted?
You're unmuted.
oh, we can hear
You're
you.
okay.
Yeah, Doug, Dustin and Croyer, Londonderry, New Hampshire. 2 questions. Have you formed any opinion on the Wyndham audit? I don't want to share my input, but I'd like to hear yours if you had it. Did you have a chance to observe? Did you go down to that military training center at all? And then what would
I did not. I'm in
Okay.
town selectman here in Richmond now, and I have a lot to do. I'm also in the Republican here in Cheshire County, but I haven't come to a complete conclusion about that audit. I'm a little mistrustful of it, but I understand that the folded ballot is a convenient way to explain the anomalies there, and it may very well be the true one. But of course, that opens up the question of, was it premeditated or just a fluke? But it certainly points out the fact that no machine should be counting our votes. Because even if it was just a fluke, it's a problem.
Right.
Yeah, but hold on, Doug, hold on a second. Forget fluke. This has happened on multiple machines all over the place. It wasn't just one machine in Pelham. My understanding is 2 machines in Londonderry were reset. Salem, I don't know if Salem was clean or not, but there are so many questions in Nashua about exactly the things that we've seen in other counties, such as Democrats hovering over the mail-in absentees like vultures, kicking people out, people complaining to Bill Gardner on the phone that very night, nothing happening at all. So
yeah,
the second part of my question.
There's a big cover-up in the state.
Okay.
And it's the Republicans are as much to blame as the Democrats in this cover-up. They have their skin in the game. I mean, why does a red state like New Hampshire, who voted overwhelmingly for Trump, I'm sure, get 2 Democratic senators, 2 Democratic congressmen? There's a problem.
Yeah. So my second question is, what's your response to the statement that perhaps out of all the states, New Hampshire is more corrupt only because we look like we're so pure and clean, live free or die? The state is overwhelmingly corrupted, including the Republicans up to their necks in everything. You called us, you referred to Sununu as a rhino earlier. My position is that forget that. He's a Democrat. Yeah. So that's where we're at here with
Charlie Baker in Massachusetts is not a Republican. I mean,
precisely.
The Republican Party in New Hampshire is corrupt from the top down, and I've known Juliana Bergeron for years, and I know the whole situation in the Republican Party here. It's not healthy.
Right.
But we have to, the Republicans have to take back their party to begin with.
Yeah.
And then perhaps we can do something about, cleaning up the rest of this problems in the state. We're not the worst state in the country, but we're far from the best.
Well, Dustin, I'd like you to share your perspective, but let me say this first. The Republican Party is as guilty from up to their necks in every state. Oh, hi, look, we got Mike DeWine. The legislator sat home while he abused small businesses for a year, trying to shut them down. Every Republican Party in every state is corrupt, as far as I can tell, from top to bottom. And so what Trump should do, I don't know if I finished my thought at the beginning. We need everybody to know what precinct they're in, run for precinct or support someone running for precinct, go to that county meeting and elect good leaders. But the fastest way, we're doing the best we can with this little pathetic effort here. And I don't mean you're all pathetic. I thank you very much for being the ones that are really interested. I'm talking about we're reaching a few dozen people each week.
Forget it.
And
only the one upstairs.
And we're reaching a few dozen people each week, but we need Trump And I know someone who talks to Trump and Mike Lindell, the pillow man. I'm trying to get them to focus, to meet with me for lunch or something, and then go tell them what they need to do. Trump needs to announce, we have an 800 number. Donald Trump at these rallies, like he did yesterday, need to say, we have an 800 number. You call in, we got 10 people there, and they'll tell you how to run for precinct in your state. And Trump could try to take over the Republican Party, and would be challenging him within 6 months if he did that. There'd be hundreds of thousands of people running, and that's the only way. Ross Perot and Donald Trump are the only two people in my lifetime that could have made this happen quick. So Trump's got to do this, and then we would be challenging, and then he could say, "Hey, Reagan Democrats and Trump Democrats do the same thing in the Democratic Party. There's no reason the Democratic Party should be communist for the rest of our life. The Reagan Democrats and the Trump Democrats could take over the Democratic Party the same way. But first, we got to concentrate on the Republican Party. As Doug said, this was all done behind our backs, and because our leaders, and I could go through a lot of leaders who lived, they all, as Howard Phillips used to say, who eventually founded the Constitution Party, he's passed away now, unfortunately, and was head of the Conservative Caucus. Howard Phillips used to say in the 90s, in the late 80s, the conservative leaders were more interested in going to the White House and getting their pat on the head from Dan Quayle than they were in taking back the country, because they were afraid they were going to hack off Daddy Bush and Quayle and all the rest of the people that were really betraying the Republican Party and the country in the wrong direction. Even though I don't think someone like Quayle is a conscious traitor or anything, but they get in the system and they go with it. Dustin, why don't you share your perspective on what you said you felt about the Wyndham situation and so forth?
Well, so I got knee deep into this by talking to the sheriff. Sheriff put me in touch with a fellow by the name of Tom Murray. So that's how I got plugged into the whole situation. Now, I believe that Doug did a very good job explaining what happened in Wyndham. I don't want to go over that again, but it's not a isolated incident by any stretch of the imagination. And what I'm meeting with someone tomorrow to try and uncover what's going on, or what has been going on with our elections. Now, I can assure you that they are not going to do anything about anything here in New Hampshire as far as the state government's concerned. They've been whispering in the hallways since day one. They're not going to do anything. SB 43, that was passed unanimously by our very large House that Doug mentioned. Our House and Senate is 424, I believe, biggest in the world except for our own federal government. They passed this bill unanimously, but they took the teeth out of it at the very last minute. So we have an audit that wasn't an audit, and it was nothing close or even imaginably close to a forensic audit. We're going to have nothing. Now, there is a report due, I believe 2 more weeks they have left. The law stated it had to be due in 45 days. That was concluded at the end of May. So they have, 2.5 weeks or whatever left. Now, they are going to do what Doug suggested, which is throw out some porcupines. The porcupines are folds in the ballots, and dust. We needed maintenance on the machine so the scanners would operate more properly. So that's a bunch of crap. And I believe that's what they're going to push. The report's going to be hogwash, in my humble opinion. I'm not trying to mischaracterize anyone, but as I stated from earlier, we have eyewitnesses in Nashua, for example, where the Democrats hovered over the absentee ballots like vultures. They kept people away. There was no meaningful observation, just like there was no meaningful observation of the audit at the military training center. I forget the name of it, doesn't matter, where they did the audit. So they couldn't even do the audit in Wyndham. They had to move the ballots to a military training center in Pembroke, I believe it is. In any event, that's just window dressing, I suppose. My take is that I'm extraordinarily disappointed in the state of New Hampshire, every last official, the Secretary of State, the Department of Justice in New Hampshire, the governor. I don't want to get started on him. A lot of people love the guy. Okay, a lot of them are friends of mine, so I don't want to slam him personally. But he's allowed the bathroom bill. We have young men running against women in Henniker, New Hampshire, at a track meet. Okay, so that can happen anywhere. Mm-hmm. He's way too liberal on abortion. Okay, whatever. I don't like to get into that too much. I'm very, very strongly against it. So the guy's a zero, in my opinion. He did veto a lot of Democrat garbage before this last election, so I'll give him that. But I take it all back because he signed the bathroom bill up here. So in any event, my expectations are very, very low. I'm working directly with my Londonderry committee. As far as I know, 3 of those people have votes in Rockingham County. So me personally, I'm in area 3 of Rockingham County. We have 3 votes, or excuse me, each town has 3 votes or possibly 2, which are the town committee chairman, chairperson, chairwoman, chair donkey, whatever, and assistant chair. Now the secretary may also get a vote, but I don't know if it's a real vote or if it's some kind of provisional vote or something like that. Now, I believe Massachusetts is organized the same way. Is Chainsaw here by any chance? Does anyone see a user named Chainsaw Sue?
No.
Okay, she's not here. Oh, that's fine. In any event, those are my perspectives. Excuse me, Jim.
Yeah,
Jim
no, that's fine. That's
Right.
fine. Listen, Jim in Cincinnati here, I agree with everything you said and your attitude. I think you're right on track, and you're piling up the reasons why we need every concerned American that believes in the Constitution and the Second Amendment to run for precinct and oust. Eventually, if they shape up, fine. If they don't shape up, we need to oust every last one of these county.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. These guys are not going to shape up. No, they are old.
No, I know.
Right.
I just said that. To be kind of
okay.
kind. But no, we're going to need to oust them, and it's going to be a fight. But if Trump would get in it and understand it and lead it, it would happen much quicker. I mean, it could happen in the next 6 months. I don't know how fast it's going to happen at the rate we're going, because we just can't. We try, but we just can't get the word out enough.
Well, if I have a direct contact to Trump myself, and if I tell him you better start helping me with committee stuff, he doesn't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well, now that's why anybody
they're not getting the message. They don't.
Well, let me tell you what we need to happen. As I say, I can't get my local contact focused yet.
Right.
This guy's doing great work, but he's not focused on this. If you know somebody, we need to get Dan Schultz of Arizona, the attorney from Arizona, who's been in this for decades, in front of Trump for a half hour or at least 10 minutes. And he will tell him. And see, the problem is now all these people around Trump, even Bannon, it's like they're afraid to lose their credibility if Trump doesn't see it right away. You got to put somebody like Dan Schultz in front of them. If Trump says, I don't know, I don't see the relevancy, he'll fight back and say, no, Mr. President, you've got to do this. And you got to have somebody that believes it, not somebody you sent that just heard about it. You got to have somebody who believes. So we got to get Dan Schultz, and Mike Lindell, the pillow guy, should have Dan Schultz on for an hour or 2 hours on a show. And then it would really get out. I'm convinced the guy that I trust most with money and with fame now and with some power is Mike Lindell. I trust him more than anybody else that's on the national level that I think will go to the wall for the people and is truly a patriot with his history and everything. Patriot.
Hey, Jim, you ready for this? I'm going to be VIP at a Lindell event on July 24th here in Manchester.
Okay, see if you can get him to maybe you and I could do a 3-way call with him. I'm not trying to promote myself. I want to get Dan Schultz on his show. And I think Mike Lindell, people are exhilarated. We had a guy on a few weeks ago, and this is another great call. Thank you to Doug Bursall and everybody. That will be good for people if they go back and listen to it. But we had a guy on who was very properly and emotional in a manly way, saying, I'm so happy I finally know what to do. See, people want to do something, but they don't know what to do. We had a guy who's a great guy. I was at a meeting and he was the speaker, 200 people there, 150 people, something like that. And somebody raised their hand and says, they were talking about our corrupt Secretary of State, I think his name is LaRose here in Ohio, said, how are we going to get LaRose out of office? This guy wanted to know what to do. And the speaker, wanting him to give them something to do, said, well, we need to get 1,000 people, go to LaRose's office and stand outside and demand that he resign, and he'll have to resign. Now, that he was trying to give them something to do. The truth about that is they do not have to resign. They will not resign. If we had 100,000 people demanding that, we would go home and he would continue doing what he's doing. The only way to get him out there is run for precinct, change the county leaders, change the state leaders, change who's endorsed, and get this whole group of shallow, opportunist disgusting rhinos out, out, out. They can be sitting at home like we are while we're running things. That's what we need to start thinking that way. So, okay, now, does anybody, Doug, you can stay, or there may be more questions for you. Anybody can leave anytime they want, obviously. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. And by the way, huh?
Kristen is
I have another question.
Go ahead.
This should be an easy one, I think. Now, we don't want to be funding or sending money to the Republican National Party anymore, right? I mean,
Correct.
without the Republicans getting any money, though, do we default to the Democrats who have all kinds of money? Like, what's the situation with the financing and funding of the parties?
Well, I wouldn't donate any more to the
No, and I haven't, but I'm
But
worried about it.
however, we in the initial calls were saying we needed to have some funding. Let me make it clear though, because the minute you mention funding, if the other side mentions it because they seem powerful, oh, that's great. If someone on our side mentions, they think, yeah, Jim Conda Jr. is in this for the money. We've had this when we were fighting the Republican Party, who were all millionaires and we were all volunteers. They were spreading the rumor that me and my dad, who were totally volunteer, my dad was the lawyer for everybody, were in it for the money. And people on our side believed it.
Yeah.
But I'm not asking for any money for myself. I'm on Social Security. I don't need any money, don't need any credit. What I am saying, though, is there are dozens and dozens and dozens and hundreds of people out there who think like us, who are on our side, that are worth 10 or more $1 million. I'm urging one of them to give 500,000 or $1 million so we can get Dan Schultz and other people I know and working full time to spread this precinct thing across the country so we can save the country. If we don't do that, their money eventually will be worth nothing because they'll find out that it's confiscated. So we're asking. It'd be nice to have a lot of $20 donors, which I've never seen anybody but a few people in the whole country ever succeed in getting. One of which was my late friend and Doug's late friend, Father Nicholas Gruner, who passed away. But he got a lot of 100,000 people to donate to his cause. But that's very rare. So I want the rich guy to come in and boom. Like I've done and Dan Schultz has done and Doug Bursall has done 50 years of research. We know what to do, but we want somebody that has made the money to have a light bulb go on and give a fraction of their money so we can do this quickly, But nothing can replace Trump calling for it in every speech on a national level. And Trump should also be calling in every speech to get back to hand-counted paper ballots. In fact, he should have Doug Bursall come to his rallies and speak for 5 or 6 minutes on how they did it right. That's what needs to be done. Somebody's got to get to Trump and see if he would do that.
Hi, this is Bill from California. May I make a comment, or are you just taking questions?
No, you can make a comment, criticism, questions, do whatever you want.
Okay, thank you. Three things. One, we're recalling our governor in California, which is, everybody knows that, but it's not just the governor. There's a pile of other people that are being recalled, district attorneys, all kinds of people.
I didn't know that. You say there's a lot of people being recalled in California. I've never heard that. Thank you for telling us.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, you're not going to hear it in the mainstream media. The other thing is we're doing what's called affidavit parties, and that's where they have an affidavit which states their complaint against the public official. We're starting at the county level with the Board of Supervisors and then the Register of Voters and for breach of oath of office. And then we hit them with a felony for misappropriation of public funds because they're not doing their job, which is making sure this election is run correctly. And so we pointed out to them, we give them an opportunity to cure. If they don't do it, we're also doing, we then get it timestamped with the county recorder, and then we hand it over to the sheriff to arrest them. We had one guy register voters in San Luis Obispo County. After he got the letter, he just resigned. He said, I'm out.
Nice.
So it's pretty effective. The other thing is I just talked to my friend who lives in Scottsdale. 2 days ago was her last day on the floor for the Maricopa County audit. She said there were 60 cameras going 24/7, very meticulous, no break in chain of custody. during the audit. So all the paperwork is done. Now they're finishing up. Actually, they've already kind of finished up the Dominion voting machines. They're looking. The court has ordered those things to Dominion to give up the passcode so they can get in there and verify that that they were indeed connected to the internet, so they can establish that they were flipped. So, and then the mail-in ballots, that's also a foregone conclusion. Those will be gone once this thing snowballs. Now, they've said this will not change the election results. What they're doing, they've made that statement because they don't want the media to conflate that, these guys are just doing this because of Republicans. No, they're just trying. There was Democrats and Republicans working side by side. She said they were all patriots in there. They all want this corrected. They were all good friends, shook hands afterwards, and parted company. So that's done. So this will spill over to California. We're doing a petition we're starting a petition now to get the machines out. And so that's also what's going on. So I thought I'd let you guys know that California is not sleeping.
Well, good. Thank
work.
you. Thank you very much. Now, let me mention one thing, though, about the Arizona audit. You said the chain of custody is good while the audit's going on, but those ballots disappeared from public sight for 6 months. Okay. I don't know that they were switched or tampered with, but I don't know that they were not switched or tampered with. My guess is that the powers that be that had those ballots out of the public sight for 6 months would never release ballots that would reverse that election. We'll see what happens. John Brakey, who you can look up on the internet, I think it's with Audit Elections USA, I think is his website. John Brakey, Brakey, is a real lovable lefty. He will only talk about vote fraud, computer vote fraud, and so forth. But he is a lovable lefty, but I like him. He'll talk to you and he's very down to earth. He has sued, I think, 8 different counties in 8 different states to get the ballots to look at them from the 2018 election, not the 2020. And he's done that too, but 2018. And he has never been allowed to look at all the ballots. In a few cases, they let him look at a few. So people think, we'll have the ballots in case of the recount. How about the count? And we cannot get at the ballots. That is false. You cannot get at the ballots in a timely manner. Arizona's doing a great job, but they're laboring under the handicap that the rules are that the ballots disappear. But thank you so much for that report from California. I don't know, Doug, is Doug still on, or did Doug take off?
I am.
Doug,
I'm still here.
Do you want to make any closing statements? You can stay on the call as long as you want, but I didn't want to hold you here because we let people talk as long as they have a concern. And we need to talk. Maybe someone wants to ask some questions about Precinct, but Doug, thank you so much. People have been asking for weeks. We've only been doing this for about 10 weeks, I think. They've been saying, well, how should we count the votes? You've done it. You're living proof. We now have you on tape. And Dr. Q put up a picture of you speaking before American flag, which we found while you were talking. So everybody got to see what you look like too. Do you have any final comments you want to make so that then you can take off if you want to anytime?
I have one question. This fellow Schultz that you mentioned, is he any relation to Bob Schultz from New York?
No, I don't think so. Dan Schultz is on the call. Dan, I don't know you.
Dan is here.
Dan, do you want to chime in and answer Doug's question directly?
I don't know who Bob Schultz is.
Okay, Bob Schultz. Bob Schultz ran We the People. He's now probably in his 80s, but yeah, he's kind of famous in patriot circles, and he went on a hunger strike in the late 90s, which got him onto Hannity a few times. But so no, Dan is saying.
I have no other observations except I would just like to reiterate that exactly what you said. Hand counted paper ballots in the open with a chain of custody and cameras, fine, but at least you have to have public eyes on the process. That's the only way to go. Yeah. And if we're going to take back this republic at all, if we're going to, you remember Ben Franklin's famous quote when he came out of the convention hall, some very sophisticated, Philadelphia socialite, came up to him and said, "Well, Mr. Franklin, what sort of a government have you given us?" And his reply was, "A republic, ma'am,
Yes.
if you can keep it."
Mhm. And we're now tottering on the edge.
Tottering on whether we're going to keep it or not. We're descending into the abyss or not. And this election process is one of the most important issues going on today in this country. And it's very easy for people, now that the word is out and most of the people in this country understand that the elections are fraudulent, it's very easy for them to get discouraged and throw up their hands and say, "Oh, we can't do anything." That's not true. The people who run things are the people who show up. So you show up at your local precinct, show up in your local, county organization, and do things. We can turn this around.
And that's what Dan Schultz has been saying call after call and holding up a picture. We need, even if you didn't run for precinct or just found out about it or you lost, we need thousands of people and hundreds, depending on the size of the city, to show up at these county party Republican organizational meetings and at least make your voice be heard and let them know we're there and we're watching them and we're coming for their job. So, and Doug, you're like a city councilman still up there in Richmond, New Hampshire.
Yeah, I'm on the board of selectmen in the town of Richmond. So this would be the equivalent of, in most jurisdictions, of a city councilor. It's a 3 or a 5-man board that runs the town. So I would be considered the executive branch of the town government in New Hampshire.
Okay.
Yeah. And
of
course, New Hampshire town meeting is the legislative branch. The people vote direct democracy. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so thanks a lot, Doug. You can stay as long as you want. I don't know if anybody has any.
Justin raised his hand, but I don't know if he has a question for Doug or not.
No, I'm all set with Doug. Doug, I'd like to have your contact information just for my files at the very least.
Listen, Justin, if do you mind giving your email out, Doug, or he can email me and I can email you to contact him?
Well, Network America have all my contact information, so just send them whatever you want. Send them everything, my address, whatever, all of it.
Sure.
Doug, do you mind saying your email out loud here or not?
Okay.
No, Doug?
No, yeah, you can go ahead and give him my email if you like, Jim.
Do you give it to him? Because I don't know it by heart.
All right, it's the Bursaws.
Can you spell it?
T-H-E, Thomas Henry Edward, Bursaws, B-E-R, Bill, Eddie, Richard, Sam, Andy, William. Sam, the Bursaws, T-H-E-B-E-R-S-A-W-S, at IHM Media, M-E-D-I-A. So it's IHMMEDIA.net.
Got it. I'll repeat it. The Bursaws at IHMmedia.net.
That's it.
Correct.
Now, I did want to add a couple things, if you don't mind, briefly, Jim.
Go ahead.
If Bannon was on this call right now, he would tell us this stuff is in our hands. We can't count on him. As much as helpful as he's been, his show, I was attracted to it because of Raheem Kassam. I started watching his show. I learned about Dan Schultz. So I'm here because of Dan Schultz. I travel with 2 copies of Dan's books, extra copies just to share with anybody.
Tell everybody what the name of Dan's book is.
I'm not doing it. Dan can do it. It's a crazy.
We'll have Dan do that in a minute, and Dan can hold the book up. Go ahead.
Right there, you go. So Bannon would say we have to make this happen ourselves. Start our own media, start our own list, make our own contacts, start shaking these people's trees, because that's the only thing that'll pay attention. Now, my own experience here in Londonderry, LRC, Londonderry Republican Committee, the participation with our locals has, first of all, doubled, then tripled, then basically quadrupled, to the point where Victory Baptist Church, where we hold our meetings, has to move us basically to the main worship area for their church. So that's where we're having our meetings from now on. We're having a big cookout coming up. There's a lot of activities in New Hampshire. What's great about working in New Hampshire, everyone, is you can meet anyone. I've met every governor that we've had since I've lived here, which is 30 years. So, You can shake their hands. You can talk to anybody. You can go meet them. One of my favorite quotes from a woman in New Hampshire, way up by Dan's way or Doug's way, was what did they think about George Bush or something like that? And the woman, lovely woman, says, "I don't know. I've only met him a few times." You know, so that's the type of relationship that we want to have with these people. To fold it back in with Bannon, he would tell us all right here, right now, make your own contacts, make your own noise, start your own media companies, your own webcasts. You know, they could pull the plug on that guy any day they want. Rumble just updated their terms the second that Trump gets on board with Rumble, right? So they came out with some update to their terms of service over there at Rumble. So that's what I usually watch. I can find other things to find the guy, but we have to do our own things, make our own noise, make our own contacts. And as far as Trump goes, I'm not a huge Trump guy. I'll be honest with everyone. We wouldn't have Trump if the Republican Party wasn't a complete, pathetic, worthless, and cowardly disaster. There is no Trump without that happening first. And that's great. I think the guy did a great job with everything that he could. And he was fought and treacherously fought the entire time. Sessions, Bill Barr, give me a break. The FBI turned into a political machine, and we experienced on November 11th, in my opinion, a coup d'etat. The presidency, they definitely made noise in the Senate where they stopped the stuff in Georgia, the two senators down there, plus that fella Jim James in Michigan, maybe Arizona senator also, and they definitely limited damage in the House of Representatives. Here in New Hampshire, there's no way that we flipped the House red, the state Senate red, the executive committee red. Sununu increased his own margins, and we can't send a single person to Washington. It's not realistic. This didn't happen.
Right.
So,
no, these are fake computerized results. Yes. And if I could say about doing it our own thing, I would still say, and I think Dan Schultz is about to speak, even as much as Steve Bannon has done, he should be emphasizing this every show. He should have Dan on for longer periods of time, but at least he's doing it. Hannity should be doing it.
Hannity, forget that guy. He's a mop squeezer. He's a rank and file. Oh, come on, spare me with Fox News.
Okay. I'm just saying they should, if they wanted to do the right thing.
No, they're not saying anything about the voting. Not one of them. Nobody.
And they're not saying anything about Precinct either. They should be So what I wanted to say, though, is Nikki Nelson, also of Arizona, my faithful associate and a webmaster, built Network America so that we would have a place to come and talk to each other. And a lot of people are talking in it now. So you go to networkamerica.org, you hit the enter, and you can sign up in the Facebook side of the Network America. Nobody's going to shut that down unless they shut the internet down, because I control it. So it's not going to get shut down. It's not as sophisticated as Facebook, which is millions of dollars of programming, but at least is a place to go and find leaders and to talk to each other with no gatekeeper. And we're not trying to monopolize that type of a thing. We're just saying Network America was built specifically so we would have to a place to go to meet each other. We wouldn't be shut down.
Yes. Dan Schultz, there's a lady here has a question for you. I wonder if you can actually raise that question first, and then.
Who's the lady?
Yeah, Terry,
go ahead.
What's the question?
Right.
I think I already emailed you, Danny. It's about the state level seat that's available. There's a female slot available at the Republican state committee level.
Okay.
And I don't know how to go after it.
What state are you in?
Massachusetts.
Okay. You're going to have to read the bylaws.
I have them, and I have. They were supposed to give notice of vacancy.
Have you been able to figure it out from the bylaws?
That's right. No.
But I've left two messages for Jim Lyons, and I've got a meeting with my local precinct committee next week. I don't know what else to do.
Yeah, you're going to have to, use your best people skills to politely inquire about that. And then if you get somebody who's not a rhino, but a conservative, they'll want you. If you get a rhino, then they're going to size you up, and so you've got to hide your true feelings, and you've just got to say, what I tell everybody today. Just say, I want to get more involved. I want to elect greater numbers of Republicans. I want to elect. I want to attract more people to the party, and I've got the time to do it, and I'm willing to make the commitment, and so I'm volunteering.
Should I even make mention of that vacant seat? I mean, I'm new. I'm not a politician, but I've got balls and I'm smart.
How did you find out about the vacancy?
I did my research. I did my homework. I've got printouts all in my home office, all around me, the congressional districts.
Well, what I mean by is how did you find out? You know, if someone told you about it, you might not reveal who that was. But if those positions are listed on a web page and then you saw that there's a vacancy,
they are.
Then
they are.
And that will show them that you got, you know, some brain matter between your ears. You can actually find information on the internet. I mean, so yeah, definitely go for it.
Yeah, in order to tell them you found out about it and see if they want you to help, right, Dan? Just approach it that way.
Right. Tell them you're ready and willing to volunteer to go do it. And hopefully they'll turn out to be conservatives or decent people, even though they might be rhinos. There are some, you know, rhinos who they're not really rhinos. They're like party people. They talk about unity, and they don't hate conservatives, but they don't hate liberals either. They're sort of, you know, wishy-washy in the middle. You know, maybe they'll turn out to be a person like that. So you can work with those people.
And maybe they just would like some help. You know, some help.
Yeah, right.
Dan, before we forget, at some point here, hold up your book. Yeah, thanks. Hold up your book.
Here's my book. It's got a real catchy title: How to Get into the Real Ball Game of Politics Where You Live to Help President Donald J. Trump Make America Great Again. And of course, the only thing that's in the book is the Precinct Committeeman strategy and how and why it works. And so I wanted to hold up this. This is that little pamphlet that you can get via the Eagle Forum, I believe, still. I think it's kind of buried on their website, but they still sell it. Yeah, there you go. That's it right there.
Eagle Forum, you said?
Yeah, Eagle Forum has that.
It's the most powerful political office in the world is not the president of the United States. So,
that kind of glitch.
You know, the Eagle Forum, you know, had a schism where they broke apart. So I don't know which one it'll be on, but just you know, Google this: the most powerful the most powerful office in the world is not the president of the United States, ! And then put Eagle Forum and maybe pamphlet, and you'll find the site. And then the other thing I wanted to show you was this. Look at this. This is from this is the Precinct Education Program. And here's what it says: a 4-session do-it-yourself course for on-the-job training of people in how to win elections by working right in their own precinct. You know who produced this? The Republican Party. The Republican Party's National Republican Congressional Committee actually had this produced by a contractor, and they sold these little packets of material. And here's the order form where you'd order, right? Cost next to nothing. This was way back in '64. They had Barry Goldwater endorsing the program. There he is, right there. He was the at that time he was the NRCC, the Senatorial Committee chairman at that time. The Republican Party itself back then in the early '60s was actually had precinct committeeman recruitment programs, and then it all just like went away because of TV and radio. I believe, and maybe more nefarious reasons. I wanted to say one other thing. I put it in the chat. Okay, we're going into the 2022 primaries. Guess who's coming out of the woodwork like crazy all over the place, at least here in Arizona? I mean, we've got like 9 or 10 people who have announced, I'm running for governor. That 7 or 8 people saying, I'm running for Secretary of State, right? This is what I'm telling people now, okay, who contact me and they say, hey, I can't find anything about how to get involved in the party where I live. Nobody's, you know, the party committee's website sucks. There's nothing there. Here's what you do now, because everybody and their brother is running for something, it seems, and they all claim that they're really, really conservative. Okay, call those announced candidates, go to their website. If you can't find your county committee or your town committee, like in, Massachusetts doesn't have county committees, Connecticut doesn't have county committees, it's town committee. If you can't find one or none exist, and nobody, you just can't find anybody, because that's the way it is in some states, do this. Call those candidates and say the following. So you want my vote, right? Yeah, I want your vote. I want your vote. Okay, so then ask them. Okay, I'm trying to get into the party to become a precinct committeeman. Tell me how to do it. And if they don't know how to do it, then you say to them, would you find out ASAP how to do it and let me know? And based on your answer, that'll help me decide who to vote for in the primary. Put the onus on those candidates. That's all I got.
Hey, listen, Dustin, I wanted to tell everybody this. That is a great pamphlet by the Eagle Forum, but I want to give credit where credit is due. They actually did a little more detailed job, but they copied that from a guy named Rick Herron, who in 1988.
Oh, was it Rick who wrote it?
No, Rick gave a speech in 1988 to us in Cincinnati called The Most Powerful Office in the Land. With his permission, I transcribed it. If you go to networkamerica.org and hit Run for Precinct, then you can find that short 4-page speech. It takes up 4 pages, and it's really good and clear. He was speaking to pro-lifers, but you could plug in the Second Amendment or any issue you wanted, or the Constitution. And it's really, but that in other words, I'm glad that they picked that up, the Eagle Forum, but they didn't give Rick any credit, which I guess he didn't care about. But he was the first one that put together a nice little pamphlet, and it's really good. And theirs is really good. So I just wanted to let you know that network.
Hey, Dan, what about, I believe it was you and I when we talked about, there's a group, software engineer, super genius out of Rhode Island, Vote GOV or Vote, was that you we discussed that with?
It's our vote. It's Steve Adler.
Our vote. Steve Adler, right. So we should spend a couple minutes about that, Dan, don't you think?
Yeah, that was Dan.
Our votes is the most powerful software in the world for winning elections. And the Republican Party won't license it from Steve Adler because it also allows you to do this. It allows precinct committeemen and all across the state to communicate with one another on a secure private platform. That's the last thing the Republican Party wants precinct committeemen to be able to do, because for all sorts of reasons, not to mention this reason, we have this great genius who's running the Republican Party here in the state of Arizona, Kelly Ward, and we're going to have a meeting in the upcoming January whether or not to a mass meeting. Okay, there was an attempt to recall her. It was not well done at all. They didn't listen to me and it failed. So, but at a mass meeting, you can walk up to the microphone in Arizona and you can make a motion to remove any of the officers by just a majority vote. Simple. I move to remove the chairman of the Arizona Republican Party. Seconded. Then there's a debate and then a vote and majority rules and she's gone, right? So I could right now, if we had our votes, email to every other, we have 1,471 state committeemen. We have one state committeeman for every 3 elected precinct committeemen. I could send an email out on our votes if we had it. A poll question to every other state committeeman. Hey, I'm taking everybody's temperature on whether or not to retain Kelly Ward. If you want to see how great she is, go to azgop.com and look at the state of our website. It's been that way for 2 months. I didn't check it today, but I'm sure they haven't fixed it. There's nothing there, nothing. Okay, so I could send out a poll question to 1,471 people and then see what kind of results I get. And then if I get results like this, 90% responded and 85% of the 90% who responded said, yeah, I'll support that motion to remove her. if someone makes that motion. Well, guess what's going to happen then? She'll probably just resign, make up some excuse to resign right away, because she doesn't want to have egg on her face. Who wants their legacy to be that she did such a great, stellar job that halfway through her 2-year term, she was removed by a simple majority vote? Our votes let you do that. The party becomes better when we can communicate with one another. The Democrats have the original version of our votes. It's called Vote Builder, and they've had it for 10 years, over 10 years. Howard Dean got it from Steve Adler, wrote the source code for our votes. So our votes exist. And somebody else in the chat was saying, I think it was Jack Lamb, hey, we're not communicating. We don't have a communications platform. Yeah, we don't. I'm working on trying to build one. Network America would be a good one. The chat forums on Network America are terrific, but nobody's using it. I don't know why nobody's using it. I don't know. But I'm trying to build another platform with this guy now, Robert Beatles. And I just, there's only so many hours in the day, and 8 of them I have to sleep. 8 of the 24 I have to sleep. Okay. So I don't get
too many,
done, right?
Too many.
Our votes is terrific. And it would be wonderful if we could get the party but the party will never get it for us unless we take over the party. Right. Meanwhile, what I'm trying to do is set up a thing where I can get every conservative in a state, every conservative candidate, like I said, all these people coming out of the woodwork to run. My congressional district 9, we already have 3 Republican candidates want to run in the primary. I think 2 of the 3 have run. One guy's run, this is his 4th go around, right? And it's a gerrymandered district, but we're going through redistricting, so everything might change, right? So anyways, if we could get all of the primary candidates and their donors and backers for every office in a state to pool their money and get our votes, and then get the license, and then work together to boost turnout and use it to recruit precinct committeemen as well, we could really have something. And our votes is not cheap. It's expensive because it does everything. Every candidate in a state can use it. Every precinct committeeman in a state can use it. Steve Adler sits down with the state chairman and writes a license so that he insists that every precinct committeeman can communicate with every other precinct committeeman in a state. And if the state were to break that license requirement, he'd pull the software from them, because he wants everybody to be able to communicate with one another. So it's www.rvotes.com. I'll put it in the chat.
So Dan, I'm a little bit confused. If we had enough money, could we buy our votes, or is it
no?
Just... Okay.
Well, I mean, sure. I mean, everything's for sale. Call Steve Adler and say, "Hey, I got $100 million, Steve. I'll write a check for $100 million if you sell me the rights to our votes." I think he'd take it.
But wait a minute, you're saying he won't do it at a normal price to
well,
people?
he's got to pay for the servers. Okay, he's got to pay for staff people to answer questions. It's real easy to use. That's the beauty of it. It's if you can use a website, any website, if you can use Facebook, you can figure out how to use our votes. And I'm not going to answer any more questions about our votes. I want people to go to his effing website and read there what's there and look at the tutorial videos. I'm tired of constantly telling you people, go check out our votes. And then I come on these calls and go, "Hey Dan, what's up? What about our votes?" Go do the homework. I don't have enough hours in the day to explain it over and over and over.
It could go on our web. I mean, we got a server if that's the problem. I'm just not clear what the problem is in getting.
Jim. Our votes is a database of every voter file in a state. Do you have the capacity on your servers to put every voter file for every voter in Ohio on your servers?
We might. Yeah, we got 2.
Okay, you might, but you don't know.
No, I don't know. No.
Yeah, all right.
Okay, I'm just unclear about, maybe you can talk about that offline.
No, I'm not going to talk about it offline. Go to ourvotes.com. If you come back to me and say, Dan, I went to Our Votes and I spent 3 hours watching everything at the Our Votes site, like you told me to do, because that's about how long it takes to learn all about it, because there's lots of tutorial videos and he goes really fast because he's a genius. I have to watch those things twice, or I have to put him on half speed because he goes so fast. He's showing all this stuff, all the capabilities. It's mind-boggling how powerful it is. You go and do that for 3 hours, then I'll talk some more about Our Votes, but not until, because I don't have enough hours in the day.
By the way, if anybody, you were talking, Dan, about coming up with another system that would vet people. So at Network America, we would list other systems on the homepage of Network America, because we're only trying to connect people. We're not trying to monopolize anything. So, okay,
Yeah,
anybody else got any comments?
No, I think Network America's platform is great, but nobody's using it.
More people are, but I agree. We're trying to figure out how to get more people to use it. Yeah. Okay. So what, anybody else got any comments, questions, criticisms, whatever?
Yeah, this is Dustin. I would just like to add, Dan, it was not my intention to get you excited, but just to share that Our Votes exist, because not many people even know about it yet. And I don't know how many times you brought it up. You brought it up with me. I went after it, of course. I'm talking to it about my LRC, and they're like, oh God, no. Oh God, no. So people don't know about it, as would be my argument. And we don't need to get excited about it. It's expensive, Jim, because it's customized database communication software. It's basically a customer relationship management database.
Okay.
Which is enormously expensive. So
it's way more. It's way more than that.
Yeah, of course it is. Of course it is, Dan. But
okay,
most people can relate to that.
Could I tell everybody, if they want to copy the chat, if you hit your chat button and you want to copy what everybody said all night, I found you can click in the chat, hit Control A, and that'll highlight everything. Then you Control C, you copy it and go paste it in a Word document. So I've been saving the chats every week, because a lot of people put interesting stuff and links in the chat and comments.
How do you copy it again?
Okay, you hit chat at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You go into the chat and you click, and then you hit Control A, which allows that highlights all the chat. Then you hit Control C, which copies all that's highlighted, and then you paste that in a Word document. I called it Chat Network America 620.
Yeah, there is an easier way.
Don't you just hit File?
Yeah, File.
It may be.
Yeah,
I
File, and then pick the option your computer. Then it's going to.
Crap! I'm on a mobile.
Yes.
I don't think I have that functionality on my mobile.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Listen, Q, did you want to comment about your attendance at the Trump rally in Cleveland? Dr. Q drove 4 hours or 3 hours and a half hours to Cleveland and back yesterday. So tell us what happened at that Trump rally.
Well, it was a good and bad experience. Good because I saw people knew who was the real president. It's President Trump. But the bad part is, like Dustin said, they're not going to shape up. The GOP is not going to shape up. They kept talking about, hey, this is like as if the 2020 result is set in stone. There is nothing you could do about it. And let's move on to 2024. I mean, this is critical thinking. This is just simple logic. If you couldn't, save the 2020, if our country is that bad that we cannot even save the 2020 results, what guarantee there is to, basically fix the 2024? And even if President Trump wins again, so what? They're going to take it away from him and just give it to some other mysterious man in the basement. So, no, I'm serious. And there was an opportunity. Unfortunately, I have physical challenge, but there was an opportunity because I got to VIP segment, but there was an opportunity that if we can meet up even with president, but nobody was there. And I didn't dare to get close to the podium, because if God forbid something would have happened, the last thing that you want is like getting buried under people's feet. So it was a very perfect opportunity. The only person who talked about the vote result was Dr. Frank again. I thank him again because he's the only person who mentioned that. The rest of them just asked for more donation, like that Representative Margaret Green. Oh yeah, send me more money. Or even Jim Jordan. I couldn't believe it that Jim Jordan was just talking about really very basic things that is basically neutral. And just wanted to share that with you guys.
Trump, I heard that Trump
Yes.
talked about the election.
Trump
being
was the only
stolen.
person. Yes.
He talked about the election being stolen from him.
Yes, yes. He talked about it. That's why it's so important that what you are doing right now. Yes, Dan. Yes, Dan. Go ahead.
I watched as much as I could, and I think I started watching when I believe is it Lorain County?
Yes.
That where that was? Lorain County.
Lorain County.
And I think he was the executive director.
Mhm.
And I mean, he didn't say what I would have said if I was the executive director of Lorain County Committee. I would have said to the audience, and I would have said, "Hey, everybody out there!" After he told them who he was. I mean, so he identified himself, Lorain County Republican Committee, and we've done well, and we went from blue to red, and rah rah rah, hip hip hooray, et cetera, et cetera. But I would have then said, and the reason that happened, and the reason it can happen even more and greater is this. And then I would have said, okay, folks out in the crowd, if you're a precinct committeeman here in Lorain County or in any other county, if you came from another county, please raise your hand and hold it up and keep it up. Raise your hand high, raise it up, hold it up. Okay, everybody else, look at those people. Eyeball one of them. I want you to talk to that person because these are the people who are really in the elite status of Trumpification of our party. Okay. I want you to lock eyeballs with that person. Make sure you talk to that person before you leave tonight and let that person tell you why it's so important to become a precinct committeeman. Okay. That guy droned on for like 20 minutes. At the end, he said, "Oh, they told me I had so much time," right? What I just said took about a minute. He didn't say that. Jim Jordan didn't say that. All of these other folks running for office, MGT, Marjorie Taylor Greene was there. She didn't say that. If they said anything, it was this: send money.
Yes.
Send me money, send me money, send me money, send me money. Not get involved and take over the party. And this was a perfect opportunity. So I put in a question in the chat earlier. I wonder, well, I don't wonder anymore because after I asked the question, I went onto the net here and I looked up Lorain County, their website. There's not a single word on it about how to become a precinct committee.
Yes.
It's the way you can tell whether a county committee is run by rhinos or conservatives is the rhino sites. All they have is get in touch with us. And then it's a check. What do you want to do? Check the box. Do you want to send us money? Of course, the send money is right there always. Volunteer. Do you want to walk a precinct? Do you want to make phone calls? It's almost like, it's not, do you want to be a voting member of this party and determine who the next county chairman is and who the state committeemen are and who the national committeemen are for Ohio, the state chairs and that? None of that. It's all, we really want you and we want you to do all this work. Well, guess what happens then? Nobody fills out the form. The first thing if you're going to recruit somebody, I don't recruit people that way. The way I recruit them is I tell them about the power of the precinct committeeman, that you get to do two things. You get to elect all the people in the party hierarchy all the way up to the RNC. Of course, I say it's down to the RNC because it's the precinct committeemen who are top. They're the top of the food chain, and they elect everybody below them. Okay, but of course, the powers that be always flip it, put the RNC at the top, and we precinct committeemen, we're like little toadstools down there that they're shoveling the shit onto. Okay, excuse my French. You got to change your mindset, right? There's never anything like that. We have to change that. And like I said, if you can tell the difference between one of the Florida counties that I have, Pasco County. It's over on the Gulf. Hang on, my wife is texting me, and I may have to run here because
Dustin, while Dan's looking at that, would you, to make it easy for me, would you just email me at info@networkamerica.org? And
so I got to run here. I got to go take my wife. She's a little under the weather, and I have to go take her some stuff. So keep talking to what is that thing about?
Have the Democrats?
I'm fair clown. So talk amongst.
Okay, thank you. Thanks,
Travel
Dan.
safe, Dan. Travel
Right,
safe.
I'll be back, maybe.
Oh,
Okay, so it was, Jim, it was info@networkamerica.org, right?
Yeah, if you
Right.
could just shoot me a quick email with your name, maybe phone number, and I could give you. I want to talk to you since you're going to be at that VIP thing, because Mike Lindell might do it, and then Trump might notice they got to do this. I mean, our country so much depends on telling
They have
people.
no plan. GOP has no plan of taking back the election.
Who has no plan?
The GOP.
Oh no. Now wait, did
Of course they have a plan.
Christine?
They do have a plan. They're going to run Pence and what's her face?
Haley.
Right, exactly. That's their plan.
True. Did Christine Brown have her hand up?
I did. I had one more question. Like, what was he talking about when he was talking about the precinct committees and how we should be operating? Have the Democrats been doing that?
Yes.
So they have a good plan, and they've been running this the whole time.
Yeah. Now, don't be put off by what I'm going to say, because if you are for the Second Amendment, if you don't want forced vaccines, you belong with us. We don't want people to drop off because somebody says something about the deep state and they say, I don't believe in the deep. Doesn't matter. We don't have to explain anything about the deep state, the shadow government, debate whether it exists. People can sense, if you like the Second Amendment and freedom as we've known it, then you belong with us, and no forced vaccines. Now, but I do want to say this. The video everyone should watch, if they haven't watched it, is The Secret of Oz by Bill Still. If it isn't on YouTube, I think we might have it down the side of one of our websites. We got a website that Nikki just bought that's going to have nothing but videos like this that we're afraid they're going to take down. We're putting them on our servers so they can't be taken down. It's called, but if it's not there, it's on BitChute, BITCHUTE, a terrible name. It means bits of information parachuting down to your computer, but it looks like it's BitChute. It's a terrible name, but it's BitChute. But that's what they really meant. Bits of information parachuting down your BitChute.com or Brightian.com or LBRY. It's kind of like library, LBRY.TV, I think.
Is it this one?
There it is. The Secret of Oz by Bill Still. In 90 minutes, I think, maybe 2 hours, he goes into, looks like it's 2.5 hours now.
Yeah. It's
how and then he's got another
2
one.
hours. Yeah.
Yeah, that was from
2 hours.
That was from 2007. Thank you, Q. That was from 2007. In 1996, he did a 3-hour one called The Money Masters, How the International Bankers Took Over America. Now, in all these sports movies, like with you hear Jerry Maguire, you follow the money or show me the money. Well, let's follow the money at the top of the world. The people that can issue money in secret are the Federal Reserve Board, delegated to them by Congress. They didn't steal it. And that's because they told the congressman, you can only do things for your constituents if you raise taxes. Let us loan you the money at this little bitty interest rate. Then you could do things for your constituents without raising taxes. That's why Congress went for it in 1913, as explained by G. Edward Griffin, who's a great educator. But The Secret of Oz goes into how the international bankers slowly took over. Once they had the control of our money in they took over the media. They erected the voting machines. He doesn't get into that. But he goes into this. Now, that's why the Democratic Party is like pure evil almost when you look at them from a constitutional standpoint at the national level. A lot of the locals are still duped, thinking it's the Democratic Party of their grandparents. The Republican Party is also compromised and funded by this crowd, and that's why they're so bad. The Republican Party is mainly got corrupted. They're still going along with the party. The sheriffs are still going along with the party. At some point, I'm helping a lot of these sheriffs say, and congressmen say, hey, wait a minute. I want to be a party loyalist, but I didn't sign up to betray my country and my family into slavery or into socialism, whatever you think their goal is. And I know it's slavery and killing of 10 to 15 million Americans like they did in Russia, like they did in China, all of which was funded by the international bankers in New York City and London. Now, people can believe it or not believe it. That's what happened. That's why we're losing. We're looking for communists and socialists when we need to be arresting the international bankers at Goldman Sachs and the Fed. Okay, that's why we're losing. Another reason why we're losing. We don't even know who the enemy is. Okay, so that's why the Republican Party is so bad, and that's why we got to go in and take the party back, because de facto, almost everybody in a position of power is going along with this. So-called
Jim?
Yeah, go ahead. What?
Jim got cut off. The bankers cut him off, guys.
Oh, I got cut off?
No, you're here. I can hear you.
Okay, I think I'm here. At least I
recorded it.
That's all I had to say. I can't remember now why I went on that tirade, but it was something that Christine Brown said that I wanted to cover, something about why the Republican Party.
You're absolutely true, Jim, because we have two segments of Communist Party. One of the, one segment is over, the other one is covered. You're absolutely right.
Right. And of course, it's the rich people. There's a speech on the internet also. So The Secret of Oz by Bill Still. There's another one by The Money Masters by Bill Still. And then there's a speech called Gary Allen, ALLEN, 1971 speech. If you search that, I think you can find his hour speech he gave in 1971. And he does a real good job of explaining why rich people want socialism and communism, and it's because they can then use the government to get you to do what they want. It's better than messing with some legislature. If they can get that in, they can use the government. And one other thing I'll just explain, that a guy, I studied this stuff my whole life because I was an alternate delegate to the Nixon convention in 1972 by a near miracle. The guy 19 years old, the girl that was supposed to go was 3 months too young. And that woke me up to this thanks to Gary Allen's book that somebody sent me anonymously, and all the other delegates. But I only figured this out about 12 years ago, thanks to Dr. Paul Rosnowski, who died in 2009. And it was my mentor in many ways. And he explained this to me, which I wonder if I never thought of it. He said, communism. The Russian farmers owned their own horses, owned their own materials, owned their own farm. When Lenin and Stalin took over, they said, hey, we own all that now. You are now on a commune. You are like animals on a commune. We own you. We own your kids. We own your property. You have no rights in court because we're not going to treat you as human beings. You are now on a big commune, hence communism. That's all. And that's what the international bankers are going for here, in my opinion. Now, if you disagree with all that, don't drop out. Keep going, because if you want the Second Amendment in the Constitution, you belong with us. But something Christine said, for some reason, sparked me to go on that tirade.
That's what it was about. I remember it was about if the Democrats have actually had this precinct committee.
Oh yeah, the Democrats
plan going on, and also about all the money going to the Republicans. Maybe you were combining some of that as well.
And also the Democrat, Obama got more donations from Wall Street than anybody in history. So the Trump faction came along and tried to oust the Clinton faction. My current conclusion is when push came to shove the second time around, the Clinton faction was too, I'm just using shorthand, was too strong. But maybe Trump's and those generals and those military men are trying to come back. But in any case, even if you disagree with everything I said, you belong in the precinct system, just trying to put constitutionalists in the precinct. And if we disagree on certain things, then don't worry about that. We all want the Constitution of the Bill of Rights, so we all need to be in the precinct. And as Dan says, Schultz says, if you're not in the precinct system, you're really not in politics.
Yeah, exactly. I saw that yesterday. All these people could have changed the destiny of this country
Yes.
but they're not informed about this. And
That's right.
you need to work harder. If you sleep 8 hours a day, cut it off to 4 hours a day.
That's it. That's it.
And
Recruit.
And
Hey guys, my phone is overheating. I'm gonna die. Even with the thing plugged in, that my phone.
Let's communicate because we need to get Dan Schultz in front of Trump.
Yeah, so just real quickly, anything fancy in the subject message, Jim, like a golden banana or something crazy?
Oh no, just put. Why don't you just put your Dustin? I'll know. I'll be looking for you. Okay.
Dustin, all caps. You got it.
Yeah,
all
we
right,
need to get Dan Schultz on a 2-hour show with Mike Lindell, which everybody will watch, and we need to get Dan in front of Schultz, Dan Schultz in front of Trump, and we're going to talk about that, Dustin.
Yeah,
Okay.
Perfect. Okay, great. Thanks, you guys. Christina, see you guys there. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Bye, Dustin.
Yeah,
all right, I'm out of here.
Dan wants to talk.
Okay, and I'm gonna have to go soon, but we're 10:13. But anybody can stay on as long as Q could stay on.
No,
Go ahead.
I
Dan,
need to go, but let's listen to what Dan wants to say.
Let's go ahead, Dan. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. Steve Stern, the flag shirt guy, down in Broward County, he was on John Frederick's program on America's Voice.news Friday afternoon, and John Fredericks did a really nice thing for him. He let him talk, just basically talk, and he said, "Hey, Dan Schultz, was on Bannon's War Room, and that's how I found out about him. And Steve Stern found out about him. He's the flag shirt guy, and he just let him talk. And then Steve Stern ran an ad on Frederick's program for his flag shirts, and turns out I've got 2 of them. I didn't even know that they were his in my closet, which I wear occasionally when I'm doing radio interviews. But the bottom line is this: if we can't get to Trump through his gatekeepers, like Corey Lewandowski isn't going to let me talk to Trump. None of those people around Trump are going to let. And I found out George Guido Lombardi, the guy who owns the 2 floors below Trump in Trump Tower, he can't even get to Trump right now. Nobody it seems, can get to Trump. So how do we get the precinct committeeman strategy in front of Trump's eyeballs or into his ears? We got to figure out some way to do that. And the ideas that I've come up thus far would be this. Cost about $11,000 to put an ad in the Wall Street Journal, a 1/3 page ad in the business section in the Florida regional, but he's up in New Jersey now, so maybe it'd be better to do it in New Jersey. Apparently he's up in New Jersey now. He's not down in Mar-a-Lago, although apparently he's coming back to Mar-a-Lago for July 4th. It's just a rumor. I don't know. Or fly a banner up and down the beach at Mar-a-Lago while he's playing golf that says, precinctstrategy.com for DJT, something real short and pithy. But then, of course, in both cases, you'd alert the media, right? You'd let the media know that this thing is happening to create media buzz, because he's a master at earned media, creating free exposure of himself to the American people. So you'd want to do something like that. Then my friend Steve Stern sent me today, and I put it in the chat, the email address for his scheduler. Her name is Elizabeth Thurston. And let me just scroll through the chat here. And the idea would be this, and I sent to this is kind of clunky here. I don't know that I'll find it.
I have it. I have it.
Bear with me.
I wrote it down.
Or if you wrote it down, great. Here it is. Her name is her email address is Eliza Thurston. I'll put this in the chat another time. Okay, just copy and paste it. But what I wrote back to Steve was bear with me. Stay on target. What was this? Here's what we need. maybe one way to get his attention would be to inundate her. It's Eliza Thurston at 45office.com. That's his
45office.com.
45office, 45office.com. Eliza, ELIZA at 45office.com, 45office.com.
Right.
And just inundate her mailbox with, hey, I'll tell you what I wrote to Steve here in a second. Yeah, here it is. Please inundate her email address with emails with this subject line. Please let President Trump know about Dan Scholes and the Precinct Committeeman strategy for winning in 2022 and 2024. Then the body of the email should say something like this. Dear Miss Thurston, please make sure President Trump watches this 1-minute video about the neighborhood precinct committeeman strategy. And then I have a link to the Rumble 1-minute promo video that John Fredericks played Friday afternoon with Steve Stern. Bannon hasn't played that ad, as far as I know. He promised me he would if they created it. He hasn't played it. Then please have him watch this short 11-minute video that explains how he can ensure wins for America First Republicans in the 2022 primary elections, and then in the general election, and then again in 2024. And that's the 11-minute video that I have on my, it's only been viewed 1,700 some times, which tells me that my website really isn't doing anything for the cause. Because if only 1,700 people have watched that YouTube video, that means despite the fact that there's been hundreds of thousands of people who have gone to my website since February 6th when I was on War Room, nobody's drilled down and really watched anything. They just like went there, looked around, and then left. Okay. That's because, marketing is all about frequency and reach. There's got to be a frequent messaging, and then there's got to be reach, big audience. And Bannon has only had me on a handful of times, really. And God bless him for doing that, but it's just not enough. And then I say, then please have him visit www.precinctstrategy.com for further information about Dan Scholes and the Neighborhood Precinct Committeeman strategy for Trumplifying the Republican Party. The Neighborhood Precinct Committeeman strategy is the strategy for taking back our republic and saving America. I don't know who Liz Thurston is. I don't know her from Adam. I don't know if she's a deep stater plant that's not loyal to Trump, but she's got the job as his scheduler. Who knows? There were so many people around Trump who I don't think had his best interests.
Yeah.
So I just don't know the answer to that question, but that's a possibility too, to do that. But I don't know that necessarily will work, because she might be one of these gatekeepers who's thinking, I'm never going to show Trump that, and he'll never see it. So I think the best way to do it is figure out some way. And another idea I came up with is these simple PC buttons. White button, big black letters, PC on it, just PC. That's it. What if you wear those buttons at these rallies? You get everybody who clued into the precinct committeeman strategy. It's sort of like the Q T-shirts.
Yes, I wore it.
Wear the P, but see, here's the thing. They may screen you out, but here's another thing that they're letting you do at these Trump rallies: wear anything patriotic. So make some patriotic T-shirts that have flags on it, but then also a round circle, white PC on it, right?
Why can't we even say, the entire thing, like precinct committeeman, like, just, they might ask, what is it?
Get away with it, but I know what happened during the campaign when they came here to Arizona in February of 2020. Some guy, I don't remember who it was. Oh, it was, I know who it was. It was Daniel McCarthy, who failed miserably in the primary against Martha McSally because he didn't do anything I told him to do, which was simply, if you want to win, recruit precinct committeemen, but he didn't do it. And so they went into the Trump, they smuggled in T-shirts of their own in their pockets or whatever. And then once they got inside the auditorium, they put on their T-shirts that said Patriot Party, not Republican Party, Patriot Party. They were grabbed and they were escorted out.
Oh.
So I don't know if we made T-shirts that said precinct committee, precinctstrategy.com.
Okay.
I don't know.
What about trying to reach, say, somebody else in Trump's family?
Yes, definitely. I'm trying to do that. I am trying to do that, but so far it hasn't worked.
Yeah, that way, getting to them by the back door is the only way I got into 2 celebrities in my life through the back door. In the front door, they got gatekeepers there who just to shoot you down, who usually can't think, as far as I can tell, Dan.
Yeah.
They usually can't think, or they're out, as you said, to more protect their own position at all costs. And
Yes.
if they're malefactors, who Trump was told by somebody, Trump has delegated his whole life. I've never been able to delegate anything and get it done, but he's delegated. So that's been a handicap in this, because they'll say, well, this Barr's the best guy. And Barr put on a great appearance on TV. I liked him personally, but he didn't do anything. So at any rate, the back door is the best way to go. That's what we're all working on trying to do. Yeah.
Yes. If you don't mind, I didn't sleep 48 hours before.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
I'm gonna be checking out too.
We're gonna shut things down.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. All you
Nice
great
talking to you.